Hello, this is Reverend Don Lewis coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically from beautiful Danville, Illinois, homeland of the Corellian tradition. And this is Midday with Reverend Don. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can type your questions or comments onto whatever platform you happen to be watching on, assuming that you're watching live, and they should show up here in my chat room, and we can talk directly. And I hope you're having a lovely day. Today is Earth Day, April 22nd. 24 Aquarius, and I want to wish you a happy Earth Day. And as you know, in the last week, I have talked at some length about Earth Day. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more today. And on Saturday, I did a public Earth Day ritual here in Danville at Earth Spirit Emporium. I'm going to be rebroadcasting that ritual today at 1 p.m. Central Time, so an hour from now. So if you didn't see the original live broadcast of that, you can see it today. Take part in it after the fact and join in the active power. I hope you're having a lovely day. And today I was going to talk a little bit more about the importance of Earth Day, both physically and metaphysically. But first, I want to take a moment to recommend my Patreon at revdonlewis.com. If you like my work and you'd like to support my work, that's an excellent way to do it. One of the things I do there is my weekly Monday night chat. I've been doing the weekly Monday night chat since 1998, and I'm still doing it. Hello to Mary Cavalcante in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. And I also do seminars through Patreon, and I wanted to take this occasion to announce my next Patreon seminar, which is going to be just over a month from now. It will be on Sunday, May 29th at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern, and it's going to be on one of my most requested subjects, which is the shadow and shadow work. And I hope you'll consider joining us for that seminar. It is free to my patrons if they are members of the seminar tier or above, and $25 a ticket to anyone else. And you'll presently be able to get tickets at CorellianPublishing.com. And that should be quite enjoyable. I'll be talking about it much more between now and then. But this is the first public announcement. And hello to Janet in the chat room. And Janet says, Happy Earth Day. And happy Earth Day to you, Janet. And, Earth Day, considering how important it really is for us to be mindful of our relationship to the earth and the future of the earth, is an often overlooked occasion. Even in our pagan community, it does not usually get nearly as much attention as the sabbats of the wheel of the year, for example. I mean, there's a certain level where that makes sense, and a certain level where we really should be paying more attention to this. And I am personally hoping to make it a bigger deal in years going forward. And I think that we all should. And the reason, of course, is that our relationship to the earth um, is one of our most important relationships. And, we could say that we also have a relationship to spirit as well as a relationship to the earth. But are these things really separate? I don't understand them as being separate things at all. But it is true to say that in traditional Western culture, they have been looked at as very separate things, and often even adversarial things in the dominant religions of the West. The earth and earthly life has often been denigrated in comparison to spirituality. And these things have been thought of as being not complementary. But certainly in the kind of paganism I practice and what I was taught, that's not really the case at all. We are present in this incarnation, in this world, for important spiritual purposes. It's part of our spiritual growth. It's not separate from it in any way. And yes, we may experience different aspects of this journey more in physical or spiritual ways, just as we experience different moments of our life in different ways, but they're both part of the same journey. And there is um, no idea of leaving the earth behind for only spirit. They are united in the journey of incarnation. And yes, there are certain periods where we're here in this physical world, certain periods where we're in the spiritual world, but a big part of the idea is that we're constantly coming back and forth. And my understanding has always been that some of the reasons for that involve the desire to more accurately, more totally express spirit in the physical world and basically bring them still closer together in their expression, even if their nature is not actually separate at all. Now, part of what this means metaphysically is when we look at the earth and the state of the earth, this has multiple different layers to it. There is the physical layer where we can say, parts of the earth are doing quite nicely, but parts of it are in great danger. And hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you, Renee. But we also have to kind of look at it spiritually too. And when we look at the dangers to our environment, to the pollution of the environment, to the things that are having various damaging effects on the earth, this also reflects our spiritual state in certain ways. So when we work to heal the earth, we're also working to heal our relationship with the universe, with spirit. If we're going to say that the earth is the body of Mother Nature, then the state of that body also reflects our relationship with Mother Nature. And the more that we do to improve the health of the earth, the more we're improving that relationship as well. If we think in terms of reincarnation, the more we're improving our next incarnation. Because part of our theology is that we do come back here. People of the majority of the branches of the Christian religion have a very different idea. They think that they can do whatever they want and never have to deal with it once they're gone from here. But that is not our point of view. It's not the point of view we espouse. It's not what we teach. And it shouldn't be how we're looking at it. We should look at this as being very much our business in terms of what we leave behind for future generations, not only in the sense of future generations, in the knowledge that we ourselves will be part of those future generations. And um, pardon me for just a moment. Um, I had an instant message that I had to take a moment to look at, but um, these are things that we must consider as we go forward. Now, last week we were talking a lot about the physical aspects of why we need to be mindful of our relationship with the environment. One of the things I was talking about, and I'm going to take a moment to talk about it again, is if you're of a certain age, you will know what great improvement we have made in terms of how we treat the environment, at least here in North America. And you'll remember the days when every road was covered in trash because people thought nothing of throwing all kinds of trash out of their car windows as they were driving, with no concern for what happened to it next. And we made a huge public campaign against that. And in a lot of ways, we had a lot of improvements. Some of that still shows. But I've noticed in these last few years, it's slipping backwards. Um, and I think that younger people don't realize where that leads. It might not seem like a big thing when you're just dropping your trash somewhere, but it builds up. It becomes um, a lot of trash over time, and it lasts. Um, it it's not even a question of how biodegradable the trash is, because much of the things that people litter are made of things like cardboard that will biodegrade, but that doesn't happen overnight, and you're kind of stuck with that in your environment until eventually it's gone. And it's not a good feeling, I don't think, to be living in a trash heap. And I can remember, and if you're of a certain age, you'll remember also when the rivers that run through most of our great cities were so polluted that you would not dare to drink the water untreated. You would not want to eat a fish that came out of that water. You really might not even want to stick your hand into it. And again, we made a huge public campaign to clear these things up. In a lot of ways, they're so much better than they were. Um, Most of those great rivers are far less polluted today. Um, I'm not sure I'd want to dip a cup into them and drink the water, even so. But I think in many cases it is far more doable now. And it's important to remember that these rivers are the source of the water that we're drinking. Um, so if the river is so polluted you don't want to drink it, what are you drinking? Are you thinking about where that's coming from? Um, some of these are great success stories. The Chicago River was once very polluted. Today, it's the source of gourmet water around the world, marketed as millennial water. Um, and that is a huge improvement. And what this shows is that we can make that kind of huge improvement. When we look at the sky, when I was young, we still saw huge clouds of black smoke coming from factories, which on occasion could completely cover the sky. But more importantly, when my grandparents were young, that was even worse. And in many parts of the world today, the skies are so clouded with smoke and smog that not only does it obscure the light, but it makes it very hard to breathe. When we look at our clear skies and breathable air, we've made a huge improvement. And we can continue to improve. We can continue to get better. I often talk about doing the next right thing. And this is one of those moments culturally when we must do the next right thing. We need to look at how much improvement we've made and continue making improvement. And how do we do that? How do we do that? Because I'm sure we all realize that there's only so much that any of us can do in our private lives that's going to affect that. That it is really people in official positions who actually affect that. And part of the answer to this is that we need to be mindful of these issues when we're choosing those people in official positions. And I think one of the things that's happened, um, at the risk of being a little controversial, we live in a time of great political division. And in a lot of cases, that division is over the so-called culture wars, and I'm not saying those are not very important issues, but I think a lot of times they're being used to distract people's attention from things like taking better care of the environment, from protections in terms of what we're eating and drinking, because and protections of the drugs people are taking. Because how often do you see a new advertisement um, for the damages caused by last week's fad drug um, that's now been recalled and people have a class action suit? I think it's rather frequent. Um, if you watch the news, how often do you see bad effects from different very common products that apparently were not really looked at before they became common. And I think that a lot of people's attention is being misdirected emotionally away from practically dealing with any of these issues, whether environmental or cultural or otherwise. It's being directed toward anger and manufactured outrage rather than any kind of positive action. And what can we do about that? Well, we can avoid being artificially outraged first and keep our minds focused on the actual practical considerations. When many forces are aimed at upsetting you, it can be hard not to become upset, but it's very important. And then we use our critical thinking skills to look at what's being said. Is there evidence to support it? What is a practical solution to it, as opposed to just being upset with someone? Um, these are the things that we need to do. And using emotion and accusations um, against that person over there or this group over there, um, based on emotion rather than any kind of actual evidence, is a very effective technique. But it's not a technique that benefits anyone to fall for. Instead, you need to look at what's really going on, look below the surface, and ask yourself, firstly, the classic question, who does this serve? Um, where do the interests point? And then, what is the real evidence? Um, if someone tries to tell you, for example, that working to improve the environment um, is damaging the economy, for example, that's an easy statement to make. But look at the actual evidence and see if it supports it. I'm not even going to take a position in terms of it, but say to you, go look at the evidence. Um, as I look, I guess I will take a position because as I look back on the many years of my life, that certainly did not seem to be the case at all. For most of the years that we were really working on improving the environment, it seems to me we got more and more prosperous through almost all of that period. It's only when we started backing off from this sort of thing, it seems to me, that we started to have serious issues. And hello to Mary in the chat room. It's good to see you, Mary. And when we stop and think about Earth Day, these are some of the things we should be thinking about. And when I set up to talk about this again today, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to say, and I don't think this is quite where I expected to go. But I do think it's the most important place to go. And that is, how do you make a good decision about the next right thing to do? When we look at something like, should we just throw our trash out of the car window? We need to stop and look at not the emotional aspect of the situation, not what's convenient to the moment, for example, but to look at the consequences, to look at the evidence of where those consequences lead, and also to look at the evidence of what happens when you depart from that practice. And I can remember being a young person when we were really campaigning heavily against this, and thinking that some of the anti-littering fines that were there seemed a little draconian to me, but I don't think that now. Um, looking at the difference they made and seeing again people not following that, I don't think they were so draconian. I think it was a vital step in the right direction. And that's based on my examination of the facts and the consequences of the action. When I look at the pollution of the air, and when I think about the fact that We don't have regular warnings not to leave our houses on certain days because of the smog factor. I think that we did the right thing in regulating those emissions and backing off that smog factor to the point we really don't have it in this country, in this part of the world. And I think that looking at certainly the evidence of my own experiences tells me that is the right course to follow. And again, how do we follow it? By putting people in positions of authority who consider it important. Um, and Reverend Mary says, I will honk and flash my lights at people who throw trash out their car windows. Good for you, Reverend Mary. Um, because, it is not so hard to keep the bag from your fast food purchase until you get to a trash can. Um, it is not so hard to keep whatever other waste you may have until you get to a trash can. There are plenty of them. We almost all have them at home. Um, there's no need to throw it out your window wherever you happen to be. And I do realize that if that's the only life you've ever known, if you've always lived in places covered in heaps of trash, maybe you don't understand why it's a problem. And my mind has gone there recently because I was noticing this already while I was still in Florida. I definitely am noticing it here in Illinois. The reaccumulation of trash. But I also do realize there are people who have lived in neighborhoods where that maybe never did get any better. But I will tell you, it's much better when you're not covered in trash. Um, so I'm not really sure where else to go with that, except to say again that when we look at these things, we don't want to look at that momentary emotion or that momentary convenience. We want to look below that at the actual situation, the actual evidence, and where it leads. Because people can and do misrepresent situations all the time in ways that they believe will get people to do what they want. They will make baseless accusations. Um, I'm not going to repeat any of the accusations out of the news these days because I'm sure you've heard them on all sides. Well, I guess I will go so far as to repeat that there are people actually claiming that that their political enemies are blood-sucking cannibals, which has got to be the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But apparently there are people naive enough to believe this. Why? Because they don't stop and look at the evidence. They're going purely on the emotion. Now, Janet says, I keep a small trash bag in the car and throw it away at home. And that's a wonderful thing. And, I remember trash containers made just for cars as well. I remember my parents had one that had two little sandbags on the side, and it went over the, it went in a particular place in the car, and the sandbags held it in place. And it was very helpful. Having just a trash bag is very helpful. It's not hard, and it makes such a difference in the quality of your life. Because when you look out of the window and you see trash everywhere, what does that say about your life? What does it say about your relationship to the earth? What does it say about your relationship to spirit, to God, goddess, whatever you want to call it? Um, I don't think it makes a good statement. I think that it doesn't make a good statement about what you feel about yourself either. Because if you are living in a trash heap, what does it say about you? And yes, I know that Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street is a very adorable character. Um, but I can't really think that living in a garbage can is a desirable state of being. I guess if that's what one wants, that's their business. But they need to keep the trash in their own trash can. And This is part of what started Earth Day. That much greater scale of pollution we were dealing with back in the 60s. Um, and I sincerely hope we don't return to that. But I do see a lot of signs of it, and I see people who seem to have it as part of their quote identity end quote. Um, and I know that it's related to all of this apocalyptic nonsense. They think in many cases that it doesn't matter what they do, the whole world is going to end any day. And all kinds of forces in society reinforce that message. But let me tell you, the earth is not going to end any day, and neither are you in all likelihood. Of course, we all of us end at some time, but at least according to my understanding, we come back. And the earth is still going to be here in whatever state we leave it. So, as we celebrate this Earth Day, we want to celebrate the glory of the earth, the beauty of nature. We want to celebrate the green and verdant trees, the beautiful flowers, the lovely sky, the clear lakes, all those beautiful things. We want to celebrate them, but we also need to be mindful about preserving them and even growing them, helping to make nature more vibrant, more healthy, more fertile, because everything about our life on Earth depends on this. And if you want to see how much it depends on it, there are certain parts of the Eastern Hemisphere which tell rather depressing stories. There are many parts around the Mediterranean that have become deserts that we know were not deserts a few thousand years ago. And the reason it's believed that they became deserts is that they were overforested, they were overfarmed, they were exploited without any consideration for the future. Now, the people who were doing that several thousand years ago didn't necessarily have our understanding of how to do better, but we do. And we need to be mindful of the fact that if you don't take care of your land, eventually it becomes a desert. And deserts are very hard to live in. And how much better to live in the beautiful world that we can have than the desert that we could make. And this is true both physically and metaphysically, because our lives can be beautiful, fertile, creative enterprises, or they can be spiritual and emotional deserts, depending on how we choose to live them. And this is why I constantly come back to choosing that next right thing. And we all of us have moments in life when we do the wrong thing. We have moments in life where we take the wrong turn. But when we do that, what we need to do is get back on the right road and continue to live a good, creative, spiritual life. And if we do so, we will continue to prosper. And if we get caught in negativity, if we get caught in bitterness, if we get caught in anger, if we get caught in division of the sort that you see throughout politics at this moment, um, it doesn't lead to a good place, neither physically or spiritually. And I'm not saying that these are not important issues, not at all. I'm saying, again, we must not get caught up in the emotion of them, but look at the reality of the situations. And again, find that next right act to make them better and not wallow in in the emotionality that a number of forces would seem to want us to wallow in. So those are my thoughts for Earth Day. Um, there's a level where I would have rather talked about that the happy, colorful flowers and all the beautiful wildlife and um, the beautiful clear lakes and so forth, which are all things to celebrate on this day. But I have to say, in a lot of ways, I find it more about healing the earth which of course is why Earth Day was really created, to focus on the healing of the Earth. And I hope that within some years in the future, it can be more about celebrating the Earth because we will have done the healing. And so, with that, I see we've come to the end of our half hour. I want to thank you for joining me. I love spending this time with you. I hope that you are enjoying it. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking more about the art of ritual in response to viewer requests from last week's ritual discussions. And we will be talking about that in more detail. On Wednesday, I will have Chris Copeland, and we'll be talking about Corellian publishing. On Thursday, my guest will be Jason Heikerel. We'll be talking about the upcoming illustration and double investiture. And of course, Friday will be our weekly roundup. So thank you for joining me, and let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Oh, and in half an hour, we'll be rebroadcasting the Earth Day ritual from Saturday. So I hope you'll join us for that. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to always find that next right thing to do. Help us not to be distracted from that next right thing, but to always try to see things realistically and not to allow ourselves to be caught in endless emotion, but rather in practical action that improves our situations and the situations of the world around us. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and thanks, and may you be blessed now and always. And may you be blessed now and always, and I'll see you tomorrow.